Nice to see you. How are you?
Good day, Tony. I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. A little frantic, as mentioned in our pre-conversation here, a very brief pre-conversation, but good and glad to be talking with you. And excited about today's Octopodcast episode. You have written a new article, which I have not yet previewed. I have it in front of me. It's beautiful bioluminescence in cephalopods. What inspired you to write it, and what's it about?
It started when we were talking about that little colossal squid that there was footage of, and we started talking about deep sea ecosystems and bioluminescence, and that kind of got the wheels turning in my head about all of the kind of diverse array of bioluminescent patterns that show up within the cephalopods. And so I thought to myself, well, it would be really cool to just kind of highlight a couple of the amazing bioluminescent creatures that we see within this group, and write a little article and show some pictures and get people excited for some cool deep sea glow in the dark stuff.
Yes, well, we love deep sea glow in the dark stuff on TONMO. This is squid specific or all cephalopods, or what's the scope?
It's not squid specific, but it's not covering all cephalopods. As I kind of started to do more research, I found out that, as far as I know, and if there's someone out there that knows differently, probably Greg the Nautilus guy, I don't think Nautilus have any sort of bioluminescence.
Right.
I couldn't find any examples of that, but Greg, please send me a message and let me know if I'm wrong here. I'd love to know if there's a glowing Nautilus in the deep sea.
That would be
Um,
amazing.
that would be so cool. And as far as I can tell, most cuttlefish, if not all cuttlefish, don't have bioluminescence. And I think that the general reason for that is because cuttlefish, as far as I'm aware, are more of a epipelagic, shallow water group of animals. And I don't know if they need bioluminescence if they're not having to communicate in the deep sea. So that's hopefully the logic there.
Yeah, well, let's tell it. That's and I don't know. So help me with this, because there's the passing cloud display, and there's a pretty famous clip, which if I can show it, I will, of like a pulsing cuttlefish, which I think is just a rapid passing cloud thing. I don't know if you
Mhm.
know the one I'm talking about. It's got its tentacles extended on either side, arms or tentacles. I don't recall. I think it's both, and it's just like looking at its prey and it's throbbing
Yeah.
in light. But I guess that's not bioluminescence, is it? That's more.
I don't think so. I think that video that you're talking about, which is a great video, so I hope you can kind of post it in this. Um, I'm pretty sure that that's an example of their ability to rapidly change color and pattern and texture.
Yeah.
And so the strobing effect that we're seeing is the really sharp change from white patterns to dark patterns. But I think the way that I wanted to go about this article was to make it really something that everybody could just enjoy, no matter what they know about cephalopods, no matter what their kind of background knowledge in the sciences is. So I tried to phrase it in more of like a popular magazine style of language rather than as a scientific article.
Excellent.
So once you start reading it, you'll notice we're starting off with a pop culture reference. We're not even talking about cephalopods. We're talking about Avatar. And the reason I did that is because I remember when the Avatar movie first came out, everybody was going on about how beautiful the alien planet of Pandora was and how everything glowed and it was so cool. And I was like, yes, but that's based on stuff from here. Like that happens on Earth too. You know that, right? Um, so yeah, we talk about bioluminescence is the glowing that happens in organic life. And I delve a little bit into the science of how that works, but not too deeply. And then we move on to some examples. We've got some great kind of highlights. Now, I do want to say that this is not in any way, shape, or form an exhaustive list of the cephalopods that use bioluminescence. There are many of them. This is just a couple of really interesting ones that I felt used it in a really interesting and different way. We start with the Firefly Squid. it's a small squid that is covered in hundreds and hundreds of these blue photophores, which why it got its name, Firefly Squid. It glows in the dark. And it's also a great example because it's a squid that uses this bioluminescence in shallow waters at certain times of year. So in Japan, there's annual spawning events of these squid. And then so the females come up to the surface, the mating rituals happen, they lay their eggs. And while this is happening at the surface, they're all glowing and communicating. So there's crowds of people that come to see this kind of ocean light show. So I thought it was a great example because it's something that can kind of publicly be seen, which seems bizarre for a process that's normally only restricted to deep sea communication between animals. So that's where I started. And then I kind of wanted to highlight another one of the deep sea squid that is again covered in photophores, and that's the jeweled squid from the family Histioteuthis. They are a smaller squid when we're kind of comparing all of the deep sea squids. They kind of get about that size, I think. But they're absolutely beautiful. They're covered in these tiny blue photophores. One thing that I didn't talk about because it wasn't really relevant to the article is their eyes. And I don't think that the picture really captures that, but they're the squid that has like one small eye and one large eye. I know we've talked about them on the podcast before.
Yeah. So common name, a couple of them actually, I guess the jeweled squid or the strawberry squid from the family Histioteuthis. It is Histioteuthis. Yes. What a beautiful foot. Boy, I recall Histioteuthis not being as charming, but that's an incredible photo.
That's a particularly it's a gorgeous photo. When I was kind of choosing the images that I wanted to use, I knew that photo existed from previous kind of my own little previous research into this family. So I went searching for it. There are a lot of much creepier photos of these squid.
Yeah, I've seen those.
But yeah, this one really shows off the photophores really well.
Yeah, incredible.
And it also helps to kind of showcase why they're called strawberry squid, because they do indeed look like they're covered in little like strawberry seeds.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, across these squid, so we've talked about two so far, Firefly and let's go with Strawberry Squid here for conversational purposes. How would you compare how do they compare in terms of the prevalence of bioluminescence? Are Firefly Squid more luminous than Strawberry Squid, or about the same? Or are these a couple of examples that are highly luminous? Because some cephalopods, right, they have bioluminescence, but there's just little touches of it. I guess maybe Vampire Squid comes to mind, or maybe I'm wrong on that one. But there are a couple of other squid species that I noticed have just like a couple of dots, if you will, and that's about the size of it. Whereas these two species are awash in bioluminescence.
I think that's a really interesting question, Tony. So thank you for asking. In the photos that we see in the article, and as well when you're doing the searches online, if you're looking at the Firefly Squid, all of the photos of it show these really bright blue bioluminescent dots. So it might seem logical to say, well, yes, these are very vibrantly bioluminescent. Whereas the photos of Histioteuthis, it's actually really challenging to find photos of it with the glowing dots in a dark lab, essentially. And that would be why, because you would need to get the animal into a laboratory setting to get those really clear bioluminescent photos.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's why nothing beats seeing these creatures with your own two eyes, which is what makes the cephalopod conferences we've done in the past so enriching, because of course it's really hard to see anything in situ. So cheers to anybody who like there's some black water divers, right? Who will capture some amazing photos. You mentioned that Firefly Squid are actually pretty shallow.
Well, they're only shallow for one part of the year. They do spend a lot of their lives in the deep sea.
Interesting. Yeah. So what an experience it is to be able to get out and see all that happening up front. Because again, yeah, to your point, um, photography, when it comes to things like bioluminescence, can have a big impact on what we, the reader, actually sees and interprets
Mhm.
as reality. So interesting stuff.
Oh, yes. I mean, the photos that I've picked for this article were picked for a reason. And they're going to help promote, the photophores and the bioluminescent properties of each of these animals. That in no way means that these animals are always showcasing this amazing light brilliance. And it's something that is actually discussed in the article as well, that for animals like the firefly squid, and there's a few other examples, it's been shown that they can actually adapt the intensity of the light that they produce. So we talk a little bit in the article about why cephalopods might use bioluminescence. And for those two first examples that we were chatting about, the reason why you would need bioluminescence is for counter illumination. So we've talked in the podcast before that when light shines down from the surface, it's going to cast a shadow on anything swimming in there. And a predator below that thing would be able to see it. So cephalopods then use those photophores and that bioluminescence to help mask their shadow, and try and blend in with the upwelling light. And when I was doing research, I found that intensity changes between day and night in particular, because light from the sun is a different wavelength than light from the moon.
Yeah. Amazing.
It
Incredible.
is, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and it's stuff that again so hard to capture. We have to use our imagination a lot of times when it comes to cephalopods to understand the depth of their capabilities, and that's a great example of it. So they basically attenuate their brightness, and my gosh, it would be interesting to study if they behave differently under a full moon versus a new moon, for
Mm.
example. Really cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and we further on down the article, we move to Taningia danae, the octopus squid, which has the world's largest light-producing organs in an animal.
Mm,
Um, it's kind of estimated that they are roughly the size of a lemon, and it's another example of how they're able to adjust their light production in a different way. So those photophores are surrounded by a contractile membrane, which is very darkly pigmented to kind of block out the light. So I've put a link to a fantastic video in there as well. So
mhm,
hopefully that'll translate into the article. And it
mhm.
shows a Taningia strobing the photophore lights and closing the membrane and opening it again. And it completely blocks out what appears to be a very bright light in that video. So it's just another great example of how cephalopods are able to adapt to different situations and change the intensity of light that they're producing.
So many tools in the tool chest, even for like an individual species or creatures. And then when you think of, all the hundreds of different species and their different attributes, it's wild. Okay. Well, what else? So, and here is the vampire squid I see next in
Oh,
the,
we had to have the vampire squid in there.
nice.
It's one of my favorite animals. I love the vampire squid. I will probably use it as an example as much as I possibly can because it's such a great creature.
Well, yeah. I mean, it eats its own poop. Isn't that right? Or eats poop. Do I have that
It
right?
it eats poop. It definitely does. It's a detritivore, meaning that it feeds on marine snow. The
That
the
is such a better
vampires
way to, that's just such a better way to put it.
Thank
That's
you. Thank you. Marine
marine
snow is just
snow.
a fancy word for poop, but yes, it feeds on marine snow. Now, the vampire squid is technically not a squid. It is technically not an octopus. It's its own little thing in the Vampiromorpha order. And so it sends out long feeding filaments, which are sticky and covered in mucus, which catch the marine snow and then it draws it back to its mouth and it eats them. So yes, It does do that. Now, you mentioned earlier that it doesn't have bright photophores or bright bioluminescence. Yes and no. I the interesting thing about Vampire Toothis is the different ways that it uses bioluminescence. So in the picture that we have in the article, it shows a couple of different bioluminescent examples. It has some fairly large photophores at the very top of its mantle, right at the base of its fins. I would say that those are fairly bright. I don't think it's quite as bright as what the Firefly Squid example is, but they're fairly large photophores and they emit a fairly large amount of light. And it also has photophores at the tips of its arms, and there's like a network of them across its outer skin layer. Now, those appear to be significantly less bright. The ones at the arm you can kind of see in the photo. The skin ones you can't see at all in the photo, and I think it's something that you would need to be very close to the animal or have a very high definition telescopic lens filming it in order to be able to see the detail. I know that I have seen these photophores before, but I couldn't really find a video or an image to really showcase them.
Again, whether is Vampire Toothis using bioluminescence in the same way, meaning to kind of cloak itself against the upper water column so that predators below don't see them? Is that basically the main thing, or are there other communication purposes?
No,
or
there's other reasons. Now, it does use it in a way to try and protect itself from predation. If you are, I think the odd thing about Vampire Toothis is where it lives in the first place. It lives in the oxygen minimum zone, which is not an area of the water column that a lot of animals kind of call home.
Sorry, I'm going to ask you to repeat the zone again. Where do they live?
In the oxygen minimum zone.
Gotcha.
There's an area below the surface layers, which we call the epipelagic, and the deep sea, where the temperature changes, pressure changes quite dramatically, and there's just not a lot of oxygen in that kind of belt of the water column, and not many things live there permanently. But the vampire squid has a very low metabolism, and it suits that habitat really well. So it lives there. There are things that will try and eat it, but not a lot of other predators are going to live in that area. That being said, the photophores are still probably used for interspecies communication or trying to get away from predators. If it's dark and there's all of these glowing things that are just kind of waving everywhere, that could get a bit confusing. But the other really cool thing that it does is it secretes a mucus, not like ink like we would think of for squid, but literally like a chew sneeze. It secretes it from the tips of its arms, and the mucus itself is also slightly bioluminescent. So something that would be attacking it all of a sudden is going to see this glowing snot cloud in the water column, which, I mean, I'd find that confusing.
A charming squid, Vampire Toothis, when you think about it. And you mentioned those filaments. I guess it's just really just strands of mucus, I guess, to attract prey or food, or to capture marine snow, maybe.
Marine snow, yes, that's our fancy term of the day.
I'm getting there. I'm leveling up. It would be interesting to get an account of any of these species using bioluminescence to communicate for the purpose of mating. I don't suppose we've seen anything like that, or maybe that's not the intent or the purpose of.
Well, funny you should mention that, because I was going to say, we've been talking about why they use bioluminescence, and so kind of the reasons: find food, avoid being food. And the only other thing that you're going to need to be doing in the deep sea is attract a mate. And so we do have an example in the article about some deep sea octopods that use bioluminescence, we think, to attract a mate. When we're looking at the glass octopuses, which is Japetella and Bolitaena, as the females mature, they develop a bioluminescent ring around their beak, around their oral cavity, and so it's thought that this might be part of the mating ritual of these animals. Um, it's not confirmed as far as I know. It could have something to do with feeding or trying to get prey to come closer to the beak. Um, but it's interesting that it's only in females of these animals, which is why it's kind of thought maybe this has something to do with mating, spawning. Who knows? When I was looking through articles about octopuses using bioluminescence, I did note there's a lot less octopus that do it than squid. Squid seem to be the primary cephalopod that uses this mechanism. There are some octopods that do it, but it's in no way as many as the squid were. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it is. In the blue ring octopus, or even the California two spot bimac, those rings can be pretty bright. Is that considered bioluminescence?
Again, I don't think so. I think that that is just changing color intensity, and that's chromatophore contraction. The
Hmm.
other thing that we have to be really careful of is the difference between bioluminescence from photophores and glowing reflections from something called iridiophores, which is like a very shiny cell within the skin layer. I've chatted about it a little bit in the article. It's like, when we all go to those professional photo sessions that we go to, when you go to a photo studio and they've got their whole setup and they've got the big black umbrellas that have a light in them.
Yep.
And then when they take the photo, they go, and you're blinded.
Yes.
That's like an iridiophore. It's the shiny material within those umbrellas, and it reacts to light. So there's examples of cephalopods that the light from, I guess, from our cameras or from the sun makes them look like they're shiny or that they're a bit reflective. And that's different than bioluminescence from photophores. It's an interesting process, and I think that we've got one example in there of Euprymna, which is the Hawaiian Bobtail Squid.
Yeah.
Now they do produce light with bioluminescence, but their skin also has a lot of iridiophores in it, so it looks a little bit shiny and a little bit reflective. And I was really fascinated to discover, because I didn't know this, that a lot of the research that's been done on bioluminescence has been done on this animal. Now, it is an example of an animal that I believe is found more in the surface layers, but I do know that it's a benthic animal. It spends its time kind of buried in sand, and it's the only example that I can think of where the bioluminescence is not a chemical reaction. We talk about that in the article. I'm not going to go into detail about it now, but just trust me, most of them it's a chemical reaction. This one is a symbiotic relationship between the Hawaiian Bobtail Squid and a bioluminescent bacteria. Every day, it kind of cycles through the bacteria and allows the bacterial colony to develop while it's sleeping. And then the bacteria glows. And I don't know all the details about it because there is so much research on this particular relationship between these two species. But I just thought it was a really interesting relationship.
I had the pleasure of swimming with bioluminescent bacteria, plankton maybe, when in Jamaica. There was some, excursion that you could do, and it was a night, you go out and you could just go, under the moon. It was incredible. And you get back on the boat and, you're still glowing, like your bathing suit is glowing.
Yes.
Pretty wild. But even more wild that the bobtail squid would have a symbiotic relationship with those life forms and utilize it in its day-to-day. Incredible stuff. Baffling, really. Because we talked about iridium, if I'm using that term correctly, Um, there it is. There's the mug.
New mug. I love it. It's wonderful.
So, what you should have is a mug that maybe we can do this with TONMO. When you pour the hot coffee in it, it becomes bioluminescent. Isn't that a good idea? How about that?
That's amazing. Marketing. Let's do this.
I'll have to edit this out, patent it, and then I'll show it later.
Yes, of course, secrets.
But it's baffling because definitely don't want to go into intelligent design and evolution and everything, but you just wonder, where do all these tools come from? Why, and we keep discovering and peeling back and looking more closely at the science and the behaviors and what do we know about these species and how they change so rapidly. And they're really hard to pin down, but there are certain things that we can find. And so for that, I thank you very much for assembling this article. I can't wait to post it and share it with the broader community. Thanks for talking us through it.
Oh, I hope everyone enjoys it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an ambitious topic, and it's very much one of the familiar and important attributes among many of cephalopods. Bioluminescence is one of those. It's just delightful to look at when you see it. So, and it just makes you wonder, how are they used? And I've never seen that before. I've never, when I think of a squid, I don't think about bioluminescence, immediately. I think more of the other images of Histioteuthis that I had in mind, which are not as attractive.
Well, and that's kind of why I wanted to do this, because a lot of the people that are visiting TONMO might not know the science of, they probably don't know taxonomy of squid, and they probably don't know much about, deep sea ecology and biology of these animals, unless they've kind of seen that one episode of Blue Planet where David Attenborough narrates deep sea squid and talks about bioluminescence. It's not something that a lot of people know about, but it's really cool. And this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. I hope that it kind of gets people interested in it. I've definitely encouraged people to check out the taxonomy forums, because there's lots of other squid that have really kind of cool bioluminescent patterns. And there's one kind of, I list all of the articles that I was looking at when I was doing some research. I want to kind of point out one of them. I'm going to mispronounce this name, so I apologize to the authors of this article. But it's by Jax and colleagues from 2023, and it's very similar to what I've done in this article. It's a scientific review of how cephalopods use bioluminescence, and it goes into the science in a lot of detail. So for people that are reading through this article and going, this is really cool, I want to know more, start with that article, because it's a great summary and it goes over a lot of the animals that I've discussed, plus a few other ones, in a lot more scientific detail, which I hope people will enjoy.
Excellent. You are leading us into the rabbit hole. You are.
That's the hope.
what's the we could call it orange pilled for orange pilling.
Yeah, we're orange pilling it.
That's great. Well, this is a great article for sure. I can't wait to convert it, get it into TONMO form, preserving all your layout here, which is beautiful, reads great. So I hope to, recreate that accordingly. But great research and distilling for the TONMO audience what bioluminescence in cephalopods is all about. So again, thank you for putting that together, Aaron.
Happy to do it. And I'm hoping that we shed some light on some really cool stuff.
Very good. Awesome, Aaron. Yeah, so I will look forward to the next volume of articles that you'll be producing.
Okay, I mean, how long did it take to get this one out?
Yeah, fair enough. We will talk, you and I will try to do this again in the last week of August. As we discussed, we'll try to get a news episode out, Cephalopod news for the month of August, because we did one for July.
There's got to be some breaking news.
Oh my gosh, there's so much. there's the San Antonio, just really quick before we break, the San Antonio aquarium, there was an octopus in there, and a woman with her 6-year-old, they didn't have the lid on the display because there's usually staff around, but the 6-year-old reached his arm into this tank, and the octopus took hold of the 6-year-old boy, pulled him into the tank. Staff came around eventually, got entangled themselves. Thankfully, the boy was able to break free, but has, like, all the suction cup hickeys up and down his arm. The mother took to TikTok, went viral, and then went, the rounds of interviews. The story just continues to unfold. So let's check on where that story's at when we get back together in August. That was a big one. People ask me about that at parties and whatnot. Hey, did you hear about, and I was thinking about calling the aquarium and or the mother to kind of, get the story and maybe, cover it as the Octopus News magazine online that we are. I'd be well within my rights to do that. But, time and effort gets in the way sometimes. But if it's still a story, maybe we will pick up on it. We'll let the dust settle. But whatever the case, I look forward to covering all the news that's fit to print in ink with you later this month. Thanks for walking us through this bioluminescence article. Excellent stuff. I will get it out coincident with publishing this video, which will happen here in the month of August, hopefully by the end of the week. Don't hold me to that, but I'll let you know. Keep it posted. Great talking to you as always, Aaron. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Tony. I'll see you later.
Right on.